The following is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network.
Hey, Hokie Nation, want to give you a little bit of information about the 2017 Matt Talk Online D1 Preview Guide that'll be digitally available March 14th. This is everything you need to know about the NCAA championships in St. Louis, every wrestler, every record, historical data, anything you can think of that you would want to know about the tournament, including a fantasy primer and pick'em primer, things that you expect me to deliver to you. I've got it for you. $5 off the sticker price if you go to mattalkonline.com/fanguide17. And when you order, enter the promo code podcast. Yes, podcast, one word, all lowercase. It'll save you $5. It'll be digitally delivered to your email March 14th. You do not want to miss this awesome resource that I put out for the wrestling community. It's used by every PA announcer, well, myself included. It's also used by the ESPN Mat Side announcers and ESPN, their production team. They love it. So you want to get what they get, optimized for your tablet. It's usually $19.99. I'm knocking $5 off for listeners of the Matt Talk Podcast Network, especially you at Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Use the promo code podcast at mattalkonline.com/fanguide17 and order the quintessential wrestling preview guide. Nothing like it on the planet. You can get it, mattalkonline.com/fanguide17. Use that promo code podcast.
It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Kevin Dresser and his staff. Now, let's join your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, Jason Bryant.
Another episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling is the Hokie Wrestling program coming down the stretch. Its final two regular season home duels of the year. There may be another home duel on February 19th. We'll talk about that as the NWCA National Duel Series is approaching. And the big placement with that match is the two duels that happen this weekend at Castle Coliseum. We're here talking with Virginia Tech head wrestling coach Kevin Dresser. Coach Dresser, coming down to the wire the second year in a row, Virginia Tech, NC State, to really decide the ACC regular season championship. And, you know, when you schedule these things, do they just fold out perfectly like this? Last duel of the year, there's your ACC regular season championship.
Gosh, it's kind of looking that way. Last year, you know, we went to Raleigh, and it was for all the titles, the title belt, and now they're coming to Blacksburg for the title belt. So we're excited. You know, we coach our guys up to that the biggest match of the year is the next match. And so the biggest match of the year for us is NC State, and then at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, the biggest match of the year for us will be at 12:30 the next day against South Dakota State. So, but yeah, you know, getting a chance to pick up a trophy at the end of the night on Saturday is something that I know, you know, my 10 guys are excited about, but our whole team is excited about. So we hope to have a big group picture at the end of the night. That's the short-term goal.
Yeah, because the last episode of the show, you had a big group picture picking up the championship at the Virginia Duels. Now got an opportunity for another ACC regular season championship. And when we look, we're dialing the clock back and looking back at when you took the job at Virginia Tech and NC State were not competing for ACC championships. You know, there was a long time since NC State had been at the top of the ACC. Virginia Tech prior in the EWL prior to that was in the CAA, but you know, a tale of two programs moving upward. I mean, let's look at the parallels between NC State and Virginia Tech. I mean, the job Pat Popolizio's done in a short time at NC State to make that program a national power has really helped the ACC as a whole. You know, rising tide lifts all ships. But Virginia Tech and NC State have really carried the torch for the conference the last couple of years.
I will agree with that, yes. And obviously Pat's a heck of a coach. Just, you know, his record speaks for itself and how fast that they've, you know, turned that around and risen. So it's nice to set the bar high, and then, like you say, everybody's got to get to that bar, and that's what they're trying to do. You know, we've obviously had our way. I don't know if they beat us in a dual meet for 8 or 9 years, so they're going to be excited to come and try to do that. And we have to recognize that as a team that they kind of want to, well, not kind of, they want to come in and take our heads off. And anytime somebody wants to take your head off, you got to be ready to go and jump up a notch and take their head off. And so that's that'll all go down Saturday, and it's two. You know, you got a top. I think there's 7, and we're 5. And you're wrestling for the conference title. You got 2 top 10 teams wrestling for the conference championship. That should bring out some folks, I hope.
Yeah, of course, the automatic bid, we use the term loosely on the line when it comes to the national duels. These national dual sites will be hosted at non-Big Ten schools this year. They were all at Big Ten institutions last year. Now, we also looked at that you can't look past South Dakota State, who comes in hot. They just beat Oklahoma by criteria. Chris Bono has that program moving in the upward direction. They're ranked 16th. Coming off, say things go well Saturday night against North Carolina State, you got to be right there ready to go because South Dakota State is hungry. They're ranked the highest they've ever been in Division I in school history. This is a team that's got nothing to lose. I mean, we don't like to use the term trap match a whole lot, but this could be a real trap match heading into that final weekend with the national duels.
I think that you nailed it. I really do. I think that it could be. We have to, in the way that I've approached it, and I think our staff's approached it, is to me this is a great opportunity to maybe replicate Thursday night, Friday morning at the NCAA tournament. I mean, you get a tough match on Thursday night in St. Louis, and then you got to get up, you got to weigh in, and you get a tough match right away on the next morning. So instead of it being a Thursday, Friday, it's going to be a Saturday, Sunday. But I think that I think our guys get that, and I just think it's great practice for the end of the year. We're not. It's the one nice thing the Big Ten has is they have a 2-day weigh-in for their tournament. We've only got a 1-day weigh-in for the ACC. So I structured this for a reason. So hopefully our guys have the same NCAA mentality, and this isn't just by the way we're wrestling South Dakota State to finish out the season. We've got to make sure it means something, and again, it's the biggest match of the year. After we wrestle NC State, the biggest match of the whole season is South Dakota State.
We'll come back and look at potential placement of the national duels when we look at these teams. Let's just look at the breakdown with NC State. And on paper, when we all know matches aren't wrestled on paper, but people like me and the fans out there and all the fans in Hokie Nation and posting on Tech Sideline, where they're looking at this thing and they're going, okay, here's where we're favored, here's where we're favored. Now, on paper, and you're looking at the quality of talent in this duel, a lot of ranked wrestlers, but it seems like a lot of the heavy matches with ranked guys really do favor Virginia Tech, and I'm going to focus on those upper weights, especially 74, 84, and 97, where there's a real solid group of wrestlers for NC State. Start at 174, Nick Reenan, true freshman, guy that's been wrestling up his entire career, wrestled up at 195 last year, extremely proficient in Greco-Roman, very dynamic type of guy, maybe not as actively aggressive as like a Taylor Luan from Northern Iowa, but a very dynamic guy in like Luan, and we saw Taylor give Epperly a problem at the beginning of the year at Northern Iowa. Nick Reenan's not a guy Zach Epperly can afford to look past.
Absolutely not. Nope. And I think, even overall, I think my coaching staff's done a really good job of making them understand the importance of just everybody who step out there. I mean, we're a Division I wrestling. There's 78 Division I programs. So if you're a starter in a Division I program, you're probably pretty good. And obviously, Reenan's had a great high school career. And I think he's coming on of late, too. He's wrestling well. He seems to kind of getting adjusted to the college grind, and he seems like he's kind of on a roll a little bit. But, I still like our guy.
Zach Zavatsky, Michael Macchiavello, a little alliteration with the wrestlers there. Zavatsky's been on another level this year, it seems. And on paper, we got a guy that's ranked in the top 15. Same with Malik McDonald, who's been on the fringe of the rankings, maybe as high as 15 this year. And those two weights, heavy favorites in terms of just what you expect with Hokie wrestling. But again, neither guy is somebody you can look past. Nope.
I mean, they're underdogs in both matches and have nothing to lose, and we're favorites. And so when you're the favorite, you got to go out and show them why you're the favorite. I think that's the message. And those guys, like you said, I think they've got a lot of guys that are kind of between like 10 and 12 in the nation, and those are the guys that are trying to get in the top 10. So, Zach Zavatsky, if you look back to last year at this time, I mean, he was just wrestling so well, and I kind of see the same thing out of him right now, is that I feel like he just keeps wrestling better and better as the season goes on, and had such a great match last year. It was a big reason why we beat NC State down there, because, he beat a really tough guy at 184 last year. He was redshirting, and Hawks just turned into Mr. Solid for us, and so I like our chances, obviously, at those two weights.
Now, a couple weights that will be toss-ups and that really go with the momentum. Dennis Gustafson, Jamal Morris. Morris, lanky, very tough to score on. Kind of hit or miss, so with some of his results. He can go out there and beat a really good guy and then lose to a guy you'd think he's got no business being. And then, Dennis Gustafson, still handling the weight at 133. How's Gus been looking in the room, and where do you think how is he progressing at the weight class?
Dennis has done a great job in the room the last 2 weeks. He wrestled well. He kind of had a unfortunate brain lapse there at Edinburgh, but his weight, his attitude, his wrestling, I really like it. Derek St. John's been really involved in teaching him how to diet, and he's done a better job with it. And the most impressive part of him is he's been coachable. And sometimes that's everybody out there thinks, oh, these guys are all coachable. Well, they're not as coachable as people might think they are sometimes. And especially as the older they get, they kind of become less coachable. They think they've got things figured out, and we've got a pretty darn good staff here, and so Dennis has really bought in being a fourth-year guy. I always say the freshmen are the most coachable, and then each year afterwards they become, as they get comfortable, less coachable. But Dennis has really bought into especially what Coach St. John's been working with him on, not just in the room, but out of the room, and that's the area that he was falling short, and that's why he felt so bad 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, what about the progress of Kevin Nordstrom at 141? We see him back soon?
He's weighing in this weekend, so we'll see what's going to kind of be a game-time decision. But, yep, he's making progress. He's back on the mat. And so, yeah, he's a guy that can really help us down the stretch. So you'll see his mojo this weekend.
Yeah, whether we see him against Kevin Jack remains to be seen. I guess maybe if the duel, depending on where you start. I mean, if you draw for it, could be a match time decision there. But also moving into to Sunday, maybe not as a tall of an order with South Dakota State versus Kevin Jack on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident that Saturday is going to be some heavy work at 141, no matter who you put out there with Jack. And then, obviously South Dakota State, on paper, that's one of their probably weakest or most inexperienced weights. I would say inexperienced. I don't like to use the word weak, but inexperienced. So, yeah, we got to be ready to just, we just hope we can compete this weekend, but we're gonna see how he progresses, and we'll learn a lot. We'll know a lot more about 141 after we practice today.
Yeah, and Solomon Shishko going to have regardless of who it is for NC State, it's going to be a pretty formidable opponent. Sam Spino, Bo Donahue, been both in the program for a while, and then on Sunday, Alex Kocher from South Dakota State. These are two matches that are you can't look past. Kocher at the beginning of the year really gave Brandon Sorensen from Iowa a really good duel. He's beaten some good guys. Granted, he got the doors blown off of him by Anthony Kolika, but this is a guy that's beaten ranked guys all year. So not an easy weekend for Shishko.
No, I think it's perfect timing for him. And I think more than anything right now I see with Solomon that he's excited about that challenge. And I think he's a guy that just in the last, his practices he had one practice this week where I've never seen him go out and try to score more points in practice. And I'm a big guy about, what I see in practice usually is what I see in the weekend. So, he got exhausted and when you can get exhausted scoring a lot of points, that's going in the right direction. So his attitude's great. He's kind of in his own little way starting to become a little bit of a leader and being more verbal. And if you know Solomon, he's kind of quiet. So I see a guy that's ready to finish this year strong.
And Sal Mastriani at 157. Ryan Blease has seen some time at some opens as well. Are you still working that position on who's fighting for that spot, or has this pretty much been cemented to Sal's spot to lose?
Well, I think it's pretty much Sal's spot. We're going to weigh both of them in just because it's nice to have both of them there. But Sal's wrestled well. He had a good match against UVA. I'm trying to think who he wrestled after UVA. It's been so long. Maybe that was it. But he's had. He obviously dinged his knee up over in the month of December at Vegas, but we see no signs of that, so we just keep seeing progress there. So I like where Sal's at.
Going back to the top of the lineup, maybe not the most brutal draws for Joey Dance, but coming off that loss against Darian Cruz, what did this serve as a wake up call? Was it what was the situation that caused Joey Dance to lose a match? Granted, Cruz is an All-American; he's not chopped liver, but it seemed like there seemed to be tiers of 125-pounders, and Thomas Gilman, Nick Suriano, Joey Dance seemed to be that first tier, and there was a significant gap. Well, Darian Cruz maybe kind of knocked that theory down a peg. And is Joey in that top tier? What's it going to take for him to get back on track? I mean, what happened with the Cruz match?
I think it was a good wake-up call for him. I think Joey's problem is probably what makes Joey good, and I've always said this over the years, makes him bad, is that I think when he gets comfortable and thinks he's got it, and he needs to understand he's got to prepare for everybody the same. He's got to prepare for everybody like they're like, we wrestled UVA. He knew the UVA kid had really been wrestling well and had a lot of people talking about him. So he kind of really got ready. And I say he had a national finals mentality. He didn't have that with everything from his warm up to his taking crews serious wasn't the same. And so I think it was very timely. I hope it was very timely. And it's better to have that match there than like he has the last couple of years in the quarterfinals or the second round of the NCAA tournament. So sometimes those losses are blessings, and I think that maybe that's what I see with Joey right now. But he's got this guy from NC State's long, and so he's got to be really ready to go. I mean, I'm looking at the guy's record right now. He's 22-4. When you're 22-4, you're doing some things right because NC State doesn't wrestle a soft schedule.
Yeah, Sean Faust coming down from 133 to make 125, and he's got some funk to him, too. Kentucky kid as well. And now, keeping on the theme with Joey Dance, Zach Epperly. I mean, you had two number 2 ranked guys in the country lose a dual meet on the road against a top 10 opponent, Lehigh, and you still won the dual meet. One, which was incredible when you look at that just as it stands factually. But Zach Epperly, what was the situation there? Same type of thing, wake-up call, or was it sluggish? I mean, Ryan Price, no pushover.
Zach was guilty of just letting that guy wrestle that guy's match. I mean, when you're the underdog and you're wrestling a top dog like Epperly, one strategy is to try to keep it close and try to win at the end, and the Lehigh kid really did that. And Zach needs to go out and he wrestles so well, he scrambles so well, he just got to throw it out there early. And he didn't have a sense of urgency the first period, and then all of a sudden you're in a dogfight. And so, again, just like in Joey's situation, I hope we learn more from the loss than we would have from the win there. We all know how tough Zach Epperly is. I mean, he's in a match with everybody all the time, but he's got to have a sense of urgency. So, again, I think a learning experience.
Now, moving towards Sunday with South Dakota State, we talked a lot about how Pat Popolizio has really risen the bar for NC State and the ACC as a whole. And Chris Bono, here's a guy that has, South Dakota State was never ranked in the top 25 since they moved to Division I. He's in his third or fourth year there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but now they were ranked for the first time in school history last year. They've been ranked consistently all year. Probably would even be higher if a referee wouldn't have DQ'd their heavyweight against Minnesota.
Yeah,
one of the crazier
crazy,
calls of the year. I think my mouth's still on the floor at the sports pavilion about that.
Yeah, that is crazy, yeah.
But let's talk about the job South Dakota State. He's done at South Dakota State. And what makes them a formidable opponent for people unfamiliar with, one, who Chris Bono is as a coach, and two, the type of kids you get to wrestle in Brookings, South Dakota when it's freaking cold in the wintertime?
Yeah, gosh, that's a tough place to recruit to. But all of his kids, if you look at where they're from, they're all from Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, pretty much all of them. So, there's a lot of blue collar tough kids in that part of the country. So he's done a great job. I mean, gosh, he's done a great job, and he's a former great wrestler from Iowa State and international wrestler. So Chris Bono understands that he's surrounded himself with a good staff, and I'm sure he's having a fun year because he took some beatings when he first got there, knowing he was going to take some beatings. So he's definitely raised the stock there, and I'm sure South Dakota State's really excited to have Chris Bono there.
Yeah. Now, how did that relationship work in terms of getting them on a schedule? You wrestled out in Brookings last year as part of that North Dakota State, South Dakota State run. South Dakota State, their return trip. But when you look at this from a scheduling standpoint, this late in the year, it'd be like, how do you, convincing, okay, South Dakota State, getting to Brookings is not easy. Getting to Blacksburg from Brookings is not easy. How do you work that agreement there?
Well, I've always liked over, the past 5 years, if you look at our scheduling track record, we've always went out somewhere in the Midwest and wrestled, like UNI or Missouri or UNI or Iowa State one year. And then last year we went out and wrestled North Dakota State and South Dakota State just to get a different touch and a different feel. And so they obviously owed us a visit. North Dakota State came out the year before. And so last year was our return visit. This year is their return visit, South Dakota State. So I didn't think they'd be quite as daggone tough when we scheduled them, but that's all right. It's really timely for us, and I think it really gets us ready for the ACCs and the Nationals. So, again, I role play a little bit, but I'm going to look at Saturday night is a Thursday night at the NCAA tournament, and we're going to look at Friday because we still have to wrestle a body. I mean, the next morning on Sunday is going to be like Friday for us. So it's a good good, well-coached team. They're going to come out and wrestle you hard. They're going to fight. And if you look at their lineup too, with maybe the exception of one weight, they're pretty dang solid up and down.
Now we'll get to our national duels discussion, which is, of course, what triggered a lot of things last year. But this year, we'll get a head start on this. We'll look at the potential matchups. Now, even though, and again, full disclosure, I do some of the PR for the NWCA, and I'll be honest with you, I'm still unfamiliar with how certain matchups are going to work. I'm actually unfamiliar with how every matchup is going to work, save one, providing that Penn State doesn't absolutely just collapse. Same with Oklahoma State. They both have winnable duels this weekend. That should be the 1 versus 2. But then after that, that's where we get into the wondrous world of who's wrestling who, with the premise that, in theory, the next highest-ranked Big Ten team would go to the highest-ranked non-Big Ten team. Now, on paper right now, that is Iowa and Virginia Tech. Things go as, if you're a Virginia Tech fan, you beat NC State, you beat South Dakota State, everything stays put. I believe you end up 17-1. That would put Iowa and Virginia Tech in line. Now, logically, then the next one you'd probably have Ohio State and Missouri. They've already wrestled. So this is where we start getting into they've already wrestled. We don't want to repeat matchups. And Nebraska's already wrestled NC State. Lehigh's already wrestled Michigan. Missouri's already wrestled Virginia Tech, Cornell, and Ohio State. So this is going to be a little funky. And let's complicate it even more, Coach. Nebraska wrestles Ohio State and Iowa this weekend. The pairings in poll has to all be out by Sunday night. So we've got a lot of stuff that's going to happen following that South Dakota State duel to determine who's going where.
Well, I think they've been transparent, and obviously last year there wasn't a lot of transparency, and I flipped my wig and went nuts and called everybody fruit and names and oranges and everything else. So I'm not going to go to that level this year because I understand it better. And I even had a phone call a couple of weeks ago. I said, hey, just give me an idea what's going to go down here so we don't go through that again. And I'm going to live and learn and take the high road. So I can tell you this without telling you exactly who's going to wrestle who, but I know this much. I know win or lose, they've got 9 Big Ten teams that have agreed to travel, and so there's going to be 9 non-Big Ten teams. And I know win or lose, because us and NC State are both ranked so highly, that both of us will get a home dual meet the following weekend. I don't know who that's going to be, but I think you kind of touched on it and nailed it, that it's going to be predetermined, and it's really not going to go on rankings like we kind of all thought it was supposed to be last year. But they're going to do, for regional reasons and for just not duplicating a dual meet that already happened, they're going to do some, it's basically going to be, let's just say this is going to be handpicked after the first 2, which if everybody plays what they're supposed to play this weekend or wins like they're supposed to win, Oklahoma State and Penn State will wrestle at Stillwater for the national championship, and everybody else will get somebody, so we'll see who we'll get. We could get, my gut is that we'll either get probably Ohio State or Nebraska is my gut, is that we'll get one of those 2 people. And so we'll know that Sunday. That'll be exciting.
And just, obviously you're thinking you're going to get one of those teams. Got to ask it, why do you think you're not going to get Iowa?
Because Iowa doesn't want to wrestle us. How's that? Do I get bonus points for being really honest?
Bonus points is another show on the network, but we can figure that out.
Oh, that's right. You do have a bonus point show. No, they don't want to wrestle us. They've made that known, and so that's they want to stay regional. That's what they said. So probably you're looking like an Iowa Missouri deal, I guess, because I don't think they've wrestled. So that's where it's at. And hey, everybody's got their own reasons, and I'm not going to jump up and down and beat my chest on that. I'm just going to say that we're ready. We just want to wrestle a tough opponent, one more tough opponent to get us ready for ACCs. And obviously, good gosh, I looked at Nebraska's lineup the other day. Man, those guys, and because Ohio State's just geographically closer to us, I know, those, I've memorized their lineup, but Nebraska's, because they're kind of away from us and we don't see them much, and I don't think we even saw them at Vegas this year. I haven't really studied them, but I just the other night just Googling Nebraska wrestling, I pulled it up and I'm like, wow, that's a lineup. So we got to worry about this weekend. The biggest match of the season is NC State and then South Dakota State, and then we'll be tickled to death to host something here. Looks like we've got a time slot of 6:30 on Sunday night, the 19th. So I think that's the 19th. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, because
Sunday night. Yep, that's the 19th. Yep.
Yeah,
so
I think Bader said Friday on their promo over on Flow, and I'm looking at the calendar. Yep. Wait a minute, what is it? 7 days? I don't even know what day it is. I mean, you get 2 kids at home, things, and a 7-month-old that's crawling. You forget time, but But so as it goes with the opponent, you wouldn't have any objection to Nebraska or Ohio State, because those are both, they're going to be top 6, top 5 opponents going in. Getting a shot at Carver last year, obviously there was a little bit of a dangling carrot there to go into the Lions' Den and beat the Hawkeyes, but maybe less of a push to see Iowa this year, or less of a fight, and you'd be fine with Nebraska or Ohio State.
I'd be fine with either one. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if Iowa would come out here. I think it'd be good for their program. I think it would be good for the sport of wrestling, but I'm not the coach there, and so he determines what's good for their program, and that's fine. And we just want a match. We want a tough match. If you ask me if I could go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and bring one person out, I would pick Iowa. But I think watching Nebraska, and I know as good as Ohio State is, I think all three of those teams could, on a given day, beat each other. So we're going to have a tough one. I think doesn't Iowa and Nebraska wrestle this weekend?
Yeah.
I think they do. Yeah.
And Nebraska's got Ohio State and Iowa, so
so I think Nebraska, on a good day, they could knock off Iowa. I think that they're that good of a team. So, and I think both teams know that. I think so. It'll just come down to matchups, and it'll be a great weekend to watch. If you're a wrestling fan out there, man, you're going to get some treats, because there's going to be some darn good wrestling this weekend.
Last bit, I want to focus on circling back to the duels at Castle. Seniors. You got a group of seniors coming through. What have they meant to the program? How are they going to be honored this weekend?
Well, we've got some seniors. Obviously, Sal Mastriani, Ty Walls, Joey Dance. Those three guys have been, multiple-time starters for us, and All-Americans. Ty, 2-time All-American. Joey, 1-time All-American. Those guys have been major staples of our program, and you can't replace those guys. And then you got a guy like David Brigida, who's, the journeyman worker, blue-collar guy who should have never probably stayed out for wrestling because he got murdered his first 2 years, that turned himself into a better than 50% wrestler at a really tough weight. And David Brigida is a rock star in my mind, because just how tough he is and how he perseveres and how he's helped the Hokies this year. There's a guy that wrestled a few times for us too, Mateus Logier, that's a Virginia kid that's going to graduate too, that got to win a match in Castle. And he was a guy too that his first 2 years of Virginia Tech, we actually cut him, and he kind of stayed around as a manager, and then last year he made the team legitimately, and now this year he's won a bunch of matches and opens, and so pretty special group of guys right there, I'll tell you that.
All right, once again, the Hokies in action Saturday, February 11th. At 7 p.m. against the 8th-ranked Wolfpack of NC State, the ACC regular season dual meet championship on the line there. Then right back at it on Sunday, 12:30 at Castle against the 16th-ranked Jackrabbits. Yes, the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. And stick around, and we will have an episode next week talking about recapping that course of action, then going into the national duels. So we'll have a quick turnaround here on Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. And Coach Dresser, final thoughts as you head into the final, quote, regular season scheduled weekend before heading into the potential national duels matchup.
Oh, I'm just excited to see, hopefully a lot of people come out and recognize just what a big deal it is to be, wrestling for an ACC championship. I think that we're going to challenge the fans to take it one match at a time, just like we challenge our team. So we just need the Hokie Nation to be following Saturday night. If they can't make it following, I'm sure the ACC network's covering it. I think we got Devin Carter on the mic, which could be dangerous. So Devin Carter's going to be doing the broadcast on the ACC network if you can't get to Castle. But we really want people to get to Castle. We want to pack it, and NC State's going to come in thinking they're going to win, and so we need the Hokie Nation screaming and yelling. So, and then we'll talk about Sunday.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.